course, there are many options out there, and thanks to all the pioneers who have been already working on food tech, and it really relies on more education to the public and also more, restaurants involving and, working on sustainability. All right, next we'll have another panel discussion, and it will be focusing on attracting innovation to fast-track Hong Kong's journey towards a low-carbon future. So later on, this panel is going to be moderated by Mr. Chris Brown, founder and director of ReThink Hong Kong. But before we invite Mr. Brown on stage, I would like to give you a little preview. The panel is going to talk about this really interesting topic, and that it's going to bring us to a broader horizon and cover more aspects. We talked about food tech just now and also fashion innovation in the previous panel, and this panel is pretty much going to cover more on a broader sense of how we can work together in working with Hong Kong to achieve low carbon. So right now, let's welcome on stage our moderator, Mr. Chris Brown, founder and director of ReThink Hong Kong. Please welcome. I would also like to invite all the panelists to join Mr. Brown on stage. And Mr. Brown, I'll let you introduce our speakers right here, all right? All right, when our panel is seated, now over to you, Mr. Brown.
There we go. Thanks very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for sticking around for our panel discussion. Really interesting points that came up from Ben and Manav and Sonali, and I think we'll touch a bit of crossover into our discussion now. So we're going to talk about attracting innovation to fast-track Hong Kong's journey to a low-carbon future. And before I introduce my guest today, I think you just want to frame the conversation. Maybe it's the elephant in the room, but the attractiveness of startups coming to Hong Kong over the last 3 years will have clearly diminished. And I think it's our role as the business community that's here and passionate about Hong Kong, collaborating and forming partnerships that can put Hong Kong back on the world map. And we were very encouraged by some of the announcements yesterday in the policy address, some of the big infrastructure investments that are coming online in Hong Kong from a culture, arts, sports, and MICE perspective. I think that's extremely exciting. I think I chose to set my business up here, so I'm very positive about the future for Hong Kong. And we're going to talk today about some of the opportunities, but also the realistic challenges that companies around the world have, Hong Kong has for attracting companies from around the world. Welcome. Thank you all for joining me. So Desmond, Managing Director of Rouge International and Rouge Ventures. Inav, wrong order. Inav, welcome to Hong Kong. 2 weeks now you've been here? Yep, so fresh into Hong Kong. So it'd be interesting to hear the perspectives from someone who's just arriving here and understanding the opportunities. He's a new commercial consul and head of economic and commercial mission from the Israel Consulate General. And Nikki Spadell from British Consulate General, head of sustainable innovation. So it'd be great if you could just give us a few introductory words as to what you do within your organization, and perhaps a bit about your organization's purpose and objectives around supporting startups and attracting them into Hong Kong. Desmond.
Hi, my name is Desmond Marshall. I'm the MD of Rouge International and Rouge Ventures. We're VC on sustainability innovations, particularly, and other technologies as well. We also have another arm in terms of working on professional advisory work for VCs as well, for investors. One arm we work on is business portfolio turnaround, so saving VC companies, especially in a recession coming along these days, adding elements of sustainability into it, as many as we can. On the other hand, we also conduct due diligence. Now, for due diligence for investors, we particularly focus more on ESG investing, and also we have human platforms, intelligence network, so we call it the Uber of investor due diligence. So if you want to check on a restaurant in, say, for example, Vietnam, you're not going to fly over. We're going to have people doing the micro tasks to check on the company itself. for ESG investing or for everything else. Another area that we have on the due diligence part is also the AI platform that we have. We call it the Future Engine. It's specifically dedicated, and it's one of the largest databases in the world dedicated for ESG investing, because all of the companies or startups inside are all sustainability innovation startups. Oh, also we have a farm in Thailand as well. It's called, we call it a Sustainability Innovation Research Center, where we are testing out already around 9 to 10 global companies on agri-tech.
Fantastic. Thank you. Nikki.
Hi everyone, I'm Nikki from the British Consulate. I sit under the Department of International Trade. So again, in very short form, what we do is we help support companies in the UK come into Hong Kong when it comes to setting up and finding companies to collaborate with in Hong Kong, but also the other way around as well. So we do investing into the UK as well. So companies in Hong Kong who want to set up a branch or even move their whole office into the UK, we help them over there as well when it comes to which region would be best for them, if they want to do manufacturing or fintech and so on. So we kind of help them to decide what region is best for them. So it's a two-way street for us, and that's pretty much what we do.
Great, thanks. Aina.
Hi everyone. My name is Einav Nixon. I'm the newly appointed head of the Israeli Economic and Commercial Mission to Hong Kong. And basically, Nikki and I am doing practically the same. We help Israeli companies to partner with local companies in Hong Kong. We help Hong Kong companies to come to Israel and to find partners there. Basically, this is it.
Great, thank you. So I just want to frame the kind of discussion around the demand and the need for innovation, and also do a small plug as well. So 2 weeks ago, we held ReThink Hong Kong in this venue. That's now Hong Kong's biggest and I would argue most successful business event for sustainable transformation. We had nearly 5,000 delegates. So 76% of those delegates came to ReThink looking for new solutions. Okay, so there is a demand out there in the Hong Kong business ecosystem for products, services, and solutions that are going to help with their sustainable transition. So let's, under a kind of umbrella of there is a demand for this, I'd like to kind of frame the next part of the discussion about how do we help facilitate and address that demand. Now, Invest Hong Kong are expanding their internal ESG team. The policy address yesterday committed to expanding the function of 17 overseas offices to further attract business and talent to Hong Kong. We have existing programs within Science Park, Cyberport, incubators like Brink and Impact Commons. So all geared up. The kind of the infrastructure is there, but back to the elephant in the room. We're facing a problem in Hong Kong. So what I'd like you to kind of give your perspective on is that Hong Kong has traditionally and always will be that amazing stepstone into Asia, into the mainland. But considering what has happened over the last 3 and a bit years in Hong Kong, what can we do as the business community to kind of put Hong Kong back on the map? And what advice are you giving to startups? This is specifically for Nikki and I. What advice are you giving to startups that are looking at the world, opportunities around the world, to get them to focus in on Hong Kong and communicate and convince them that the opportunities here are real? Nikki, do you want to go first?
Let's take this first. So I think, again, as you were saying, there's a bit of an elephant in the room when it comes to the past couple of years here in Hong Kong. So I think it's a bit of a timely manner that we're having this panel right now, as it's going back to a bit of normality right now. So we are able to kind of do our job a little bit easier, kind of to sell Hong Kong a bit more when it comes to there's no quarantine now, just a little bit. But it's fine. Come over back to Hong Kong, please. But again, the main advice I give them is actually, obviously come and reach out to us first. We're always here. Again, a bit of a plug for us at the consulate. But the second thing is to have a bit of a game plan, a very much a focused strategy when it comes to what's your international strategy when it comes to, is it coming into China, is it coming into Asia, is it APAC, and also to have a target audience coming into Hong Kong when it comes to what's your industry and what's the challenge for the industry when it comes to their priorities, and then put a Hong Kong perspective on that. What I mean by that, it's things like with the UK, with technology in the UK, it might not be that transferable to Hong Kong with our terrain, for example. It's hard to have the bus companies from the UK, the flat UK, into Hong Kong where it comes, it's all mountains. So it's things like that, trying to have a bit of a Hong Kong lens to it. And finally, I think in my own personal opinion, it is Hong Kong companies are very much risk averse, and it's all about case studies, all about a track record. So if your company in the UK has a bit of a good track record of a big conglomerate buying you in the UK or using it for a product in the UK, use that as a case study as coming into Hong Kong, as I like to see where you've been, what you've done in the past. So that's kind of my advice before coming into Hong Kong.
And I know I know that so Israel has some very kind of specific sectors that they are excellent in innovation domestically. But again, what's the advice to those companies when they're looking to expand their business internationally?
Right, so I think the Asian market is very interesting for Israeli companies for market size wise. I think Hong Kong is really welcoming for foreigners. So for example, for Israeli, we speak Hebrew in Israel, and it's easier for Israeli to work with a very friendly English environment, such as Hong Kong, and especially if you want to go to mainland China. So for example, if a company reach out to my colleagues in the mainland, so we probably will ask them to get some promotion materials in Chinese. And here they don't need to do that because it's in English, everything here. So this is only one example. I think the banking system and the legal system is very convenient here for Israeli companies to work inside Hong Kong. And again, if you're a small company, a startup company, everything costs money and a lot of money. So you need to make decisions. What would be the best course, or what should be the first thing you should do? So you probably start with a friendly environment. And I think Hong Kong can offer this for Israeli companies. And we hope that there will come more companies now after we open up a bit.
Absolutely. I mean, I completely concur. Having set up 2 businesses in Hong Kong, the support mechanisms and the openness and the resources available to new companies, I assume from all over the world, I think are second to none. And as you say, that the ease of setting up and just the openness to international trade that has always been Hong Kong's strong point and will always be Hong Kong's strong point. I think I hope that once we get beyond the challenges of the recent times and we're back to something like normality, that's exciting. I'm certainly excited by it. So Desmond, so whilst confidence in Hong Kong takes time to return, and there are bigger, perhaps even more practical markets for international startups to consider, how are investors viewing the Hong Kong market, short and medium term? And when you're looking at potential startups and advising them on their growth strategies, where does Hong Kong fit into that in terms of the potential for those businesses to grow?
Let me give you a real case example. So recently I was helping a client to restructure and turn around their business, re-strategize, in order to to win a tender for the Hong Kong International Airport. Now, many people don't really realize that the Hong Kong IA, the international airport, is one of the greenest airports in the world, and that's what they're striving towards becoming as well. And one of the key things that they have is contractually, they need all the suppliers and the partners to be ESG driven as well, to adhere to certain standards. So that's a requirement for being sustainable at the very core itself. So this is one of the very first kind of policies that pretty much any other airport has around the world globally. Number 2, which is even more important, and most people actually don't even know, is that they have what they call an environmental incentive payment as well for the partners. What it does mean, hey, contractually, you need to be sustainable. You need to follow the international standards for ESG, but we don't just have the stick, we also have the carrot for you. So we're paying you, which is actually pretty good. And one of the key things that we help this client is to restructure it and also to attract outside sustainability innovation companies joining in as a strategic partner or as a supplier together as well, because it actually helps. Now, going back to the question, is we do have a lot of these sort of bigger global projects, which is pretty good and attractive to a lot of investors or a lot of these overseas startup companies to come here in Hong Kong. The only problem is we don't know, or most people don't know about it. So, and that's one of the key things that we have, and we didn't promote it enough. In terms of when people or the investors ourselves, we talk about Hong Kong, which is pretty tied to China, and when China is being locked down right now, the elephant in the room, people are saying, hey, Hong Kong has no attractiveness at all. Well, don't just look up, look down, okay? Southeast Asia, there's a lot of things going on. That's the reason why I have a farm in Thailand. That's why we have, and say Hong Kong is smack in the middle of Asia Pacific. It's easy in terms of living and also building up a business, but it's also easy to travel around in different parts of the world as well. So everyone's talking about Singapore. Yes, they're getting a lot of press right now. Hong Kong had a lot of press before, okay? So let's keep it up that way. And we just don't just look into just China. China is a good place, but then again, we also need Hong Kong to be a stepping stone for other places as well. And especially for ESG, we have to walk the walk, just like what the airport is. The airport is a good program and a good project. It's global, it's airport, so it applies everything. From an investor point of view, from even a normal business person point of view, one of the things that we see is, are there any applications that we can do? So yes, I can have Israel, I can have UK companies coming in, you've got great technology over there. How can we put this in Hong Kong or to other places? You got clean tech, you got other things, converting waste management. Well, we tried that before, right? So think about a few weeks ago when the bad press that we have in terms of recycling. So are we going to do that again? Or do we have opportunities for them to use Hong Kong? If Hong Kong is small, then go to somewhere else as well. So it's not just for Hong Kong, it's more about as an international or regional kind of thing moving along.
And so, I mean, you touched a little bit earlier about the farm that you have in Thailand, and as a kind of a living lab, a working lab to trial out startups. Assuming within agri-tech, where are those technologies coming from, and how are you finding them, and what's the process of kind of assessing them before you actually put them through the living lab?
Well, the farm is actually a rice farm, so it's an actual growing farm. So what we do is actually, the key concept is, if you're doing agri-tech, and you're telling, hey, I'm doing agri-tech, so some of the companies are doing satellite imagery. What are you going to show people? So I've got investors, I've got government people coming in, I've got the press coming in. What are you going to show? And say, hey, I'm doing this in a co-working space? Come on. Okay, it doesn't work like that. So one of the things that is we put them out to a real world in a sandbox area, control area, where they can actually strive and actually do the testing itself, actual helping out the farm itself. And then when I bring in investors or anyone coming in and say, hey, just look at that, okay, pay, that's it. Use it or invest in, and that's the best way to do things. And in terms of the companies, that how we structure it, like I said, we have what we call the future engine. So we have all the global different kinds of startups, sustainability innovations related kind of startups coming in. We welcome you guys to come in as well. It's free of charge. We just put them in, and we just look into the individually how the companies are, how the technology is. Of course, we're not talking about like, hey, they just have an MVP. They should have something like something that's already client-facing already, so that they can, when they come over using our farm, number one, they can actually get really rich data for yourself. We're giving out for free. You're telling people you have Asian rice farm data from Thailand. Okay, that is the 3 key points: rice, Thailand, top of the world. So you have that, it grows your database, but it also showcases to other people, where we can actually showcase to people, hey, this technology is transferable, scalable to other parts of the world as well. So well, it's baptism by fire, basically. So we're testing them out. If you're crap, we kick you out.
Good.
If I could just actually go back to your previous point as well about how a lot of opportunities in Hong Kong is not really amplified, unfortunately, overseas as well. So we actually have a bit of a platform, which is we take public or tenders, which are all on public basis as well, and government tenders, and we put it on our export opportunities platform, which amplifies it across the UK. So we take a box with healthcare or tech, for example, and any company that's listed under that category will get a ping, saying that there's an opportunity in Hong Kong. and they would then apply for the tender. So we're also trying to amplify that in that sense, because we also recognize that there's not a lot of amplification overseas, perhaps, on when it comes to big projects here in Hong Kong. And yeah, we're trying to do our part in that sense. I'm not sure if you guys have that kind of mechanism as well.
Yeah, we use the same mechanism
Yeah.
to actually address the Israeli companies and to let them know about what they can have here in Hong Kong. And we do the same actually for Hong Kong companies. We let them know if there is any opportunities here in Israel, and they can look for it later.
So how does a Hong Kong company make sure they can be made aware of those projects? Do they need to be part of a scheme? Do they need to just be on your database? What's the kind of the process that's
I
in
think
place?
the best thing is to follow us on LinkedIn and then to get all the
Always good on
information there.
LinkedIn. Cool. Okay. So I want to talk about the acceleration of the transition and the role that technology plays in that. Now, there were some encouraging comments and developments yesterday that came out of the policy address and the passing of the bills in LegCo. Now, it might only seem a small element of the challenges that we have. Increasing the levy on plastic bags, bringing forward the ban on single-use plastics. Now they play a very small part in the overall transition to a low-carbon economy, but it's really important in driving that kind of consumer behavior change and making the public in Hong Kong realize that this transition is coming. They play an important role in that. But when it comes to kind of big infrastructure, big projects, financing of projects that are going to really move the needle in terms of Hong Kong's transition to a low-carbon economy. What are the key technologies that you've seen back in Israel or back in the UK that are contributing towards that? And specifically, which ones do you feel are we can expatriate into the Hong Kong market?
Yeah, thank you. So basically, I think the first thing that when you think about sustainability, then you probably think about recycling. But the thing is that you can find Israeli companies dealing with sustainability with whole fields. So you can find a fintech company, and you can find a food tech company. For example, we have a company called Salutum. So basically what they're doing a biodegradable packaging. So here, when you go to the supermarket, everything is packed with a lot of plastic bag. So basically, they're taking these bags and they producing bags that actually dissolvable in water. So it helps save the sea. We have another company in clean tech field that actually called Solar Edge. It's very active here in Asia and in Hong Kong, and the company is harvesting and managing solar energy. And another thing that is really interesting, because I just learned that we are sitting in reclamation ground, right? So there is an Israeli company that work here in Hong Kong, for example. It's called eConcrete. They're actually having a design for concrete that help you build around the coastline, and it actually helps save the maritime life, which is really interesting. So again, when you talk about sustainability, it's everything. It's all of our day-to-day life, and I think this is what is important, that we all go together to the same direction for this important cause.
Yeah, I entirely agree. I think when it comes to the big S or the big sustainability word, unfortunately, it is an umbrella term, but fortunately, that means it's so much tech and so much innovation under it as well. Well, with the UK, again, a big champion for the UK, obviously, from where I work. But no, I think when it comes to what we're good at, it is mainly clean and affordable energy, which I think is also prioritized also in the CAP, the Climate Action Plan for Hong Kong as well, when it comes to net zero electricity generation. So we are a world leader for offshore wind farms in the UK, given our geography. I think China is a very close second, but we're going to try our best to cling on to that leader for as long as we can. So I think also in Hong Kong, CLP, if I'm not mistaken, is also in the pipeline of creating their own offshore wind farm. So we're very much looking to kind of get involved in that when it comes to the soft consultancy, the soft expertise of what we can bring with our long track record of being an offshore wind farm leader. Because I think it was 66% for Hong Kong is actually carbon emissions is actually from power generation, of which over 70% is from fossil fuels. So it's such a big low-hanging fruit, honestly, in my opinion, when it comes to clean, renewable, affordable energy there as well. So we're looking to kind of bring that in. Another element that I think is a great tech and quite exciting platform is actually a bit of a left field opinion, but agri-tech for Hong Kong. I can't remember who told me, but I think someone was telling me how Hong Kong can only last 3 days without importing our own food and goods, which is slightly terrifying. I think we all kind of actually experienced that during the fifth wave, when I'm sure we remember like the stores were all empty, and there was a bit of COVID restrictions when it comes to the border control as well. So I think we really felt that, and I think how great would it be when it comes to having vertical farms here in Hong Kong. I think in the UK we actually built recently the largest vertical farm in the world. It was the size of 96 tennis courts, which is pretty astounding. But yeah, how great would that be if we had our own domestic agri-tech industry here in Hong Kong? And also green transport, which is also a priority of the CAP here in Hong Kong as well. Things like, as I was mentioning before, with the buses, we work with a company called Alexander Dennis. They build the double-decker buses in the UK, which I'm sure are quite iconic. And they work quite closely with KMB, with MTR here, who have already purchased buses from them. And again, as I was saying before, they actually worked tirelessly for the past couple of years to try and make the tech in the UK applicable to here in Hong Kong, with the terrain, with the different infrastructure when it comes to the charging stations, for example. So it's about trying to have that Hong Kong lens to it. But last but not least, I think it's so important to have tech that's just has two elements. So for example, we work with a company called AgriVert, which is they take waste and turn it into energy, which again covers both sides of the CAP of waste management as well as net zero energy as well. So they actually recently won a tender with the OPARC 2 up in New Territories. So they're working tirelessly with Jardines as well to build this infrastructure. So again, I think there's so much innovation when it comes to, and so much kind of overlap with our own priorities in the UK versus the one here in Hong Kong as well. So I think it's all about a time for collaboration and sharing learnings, and how do we also take that learning from Hong Kong and move it into the UK as well. So I think it's a two-way street, as I always say.
You used a really important word there, Nikki, that collaboration is key. Perhaps you could talk just a little bit about that mechanism of collaborations. So you've identified technologies from the UK that can be, with a Hong Kong lens, can be relevant. How do you actually support that? Partnering up and on matchmaking with either with the projects or with potential either the government or corporates here to embed those technologies.
Yeah, of course. So again, being part of the consulate, we have a really long-standing history when it comes to businesses here in Hong Kong. So we have constant dialogue kind of to see what they want and what their priorities are and what kind of tech they're looking for. And then we tap into our network in the UK to see if we kind of match that and marry that together. And then obviously we make the connections there, and we try and facilitate each other to see if it is applicable tech for each other. But also, I was talking about this later on, but obviously ReThink, and plugging for Chris over here, it's always great to see companies here in Hong Kong actually marry and actually bring the techs together with companies. I think I was chatting to a lady from MTR from ReThink as well. So again, it was great to showcase what we can do in the UK and how to marry that together. But mainly it's just, again, through the export opportunity platform that we have, as well as making the literal connection and having that chat.
Okay, and I know in terms of the initiatives and kind of partnership matching and perhaps even funding that the Israeli government put forward, how does that work, and how's that different to other programs from UK or other trade development bodies?
Yes, so actually the Israel Innovation Authority, together with the ITC, Hong Kong ITC, actually had agreement for R&D cooperation. So for example, when a Hong Kong company and an Israeli company partner together towards, it can be sustainability, but it can be other projects, they both can get grants for the government for the research, for the R&D. So a Hong Kong government and Hong Kong company can get up to, I think, 10 million Hong Kong dollars, and an Israeli company can get up to 50% of their cost. So it's a really a good way to work together towards certain project. And the next round is actually in February. So we have it like 3 times a year, I think. So it's a great platform for both sides to work together and to get grants and to work towards whatever they want to do. So this is only one thing, but actually what we do in the economic mission. So basically, we create a network environment. So as Nikki mentioned, we do the collaboration. We do events that concerning sustainability, smart packaging, food tech, clean tech, construction tech, whatever you can tech with it. So this is our job, is to create the business opportunities, the right business opportunities between those companies. And maybe another thing that I will share with you is that the Ministry of Economy, the Israeli Ministry of Economy, actually creating communities in Israel. So for example, we have the last one that they established called Planet Tech, that it actually combines, or it's a place for government officials, influencers, startup companies in the clean tech environment to get together, to understand each other's needs, to understand how to work better together. And we have those kind of communities. We have Planet Tech, and we have other communities, but this is a great place that everyone can work together, because this is our future, right? This is very important to work together and to do that. And maybe another thing that I'll share with you that I got this morning an email from the government, from the ministry, and they decided that we're not going to use any disposable. So Desmond mentioned before, you need to walk the walk, right? So the Israeli government decided we are not going to use any disposable inside the government offices. And this is it. You need to live what you dream to, what is your dream, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, leadership and demonstrating that there is a way forward. I think that the Hong Kong government are accelerating that, or accelerating the way in which they can demonstrate that transition. But as always in Hong Kong, it's the business community to lead. And I think there's some really exciting ambitions out there from some of the leading companies in Hong Kong, and that's going to create even more opportunities for startups that are already here, and the startups that are looking to Hong Kong in the future. So we've come to the end of our discussion points. Is there anything else you'd like to bring up, Desmond, and put across to the audience about live projects that you've got ongoing or projects that you've got coming up?
Well, I've mentioned pretty much all of my projects. I think one of the key things I like to bring out in terms of sustainability is it's not just what certain party talks about. It's got to be everyone's coming in. Especially with sustainability, it's not just an app, okay? In many cases, many of these companies will require a larger space, which means that Hong Kong is at a disadvantage because space is very scarce around here. But how can we expand that over and use Hong Kong as a platform to other areas with larger spaces? And that's one of the key things, because sustainability is actually pretty local. It's not something you can say, hey, the concept is you can't ship your stuff overseas because that's going to be very expensive. And one of the key things about sustainability right now is it's still too very expensive in terms of the tech, in terms of the products that they're coming out, and that's the thing that's slowing adoption. So
yeah, but as Sonali talked about in the previous session, I think we're starting to see price parity is starting to come up in some sectors, and I think that's so important that we put that across to businesses, but also to the wider general public, that it's always been the perception that if it's sustainable, it's more expensive. It's a green tax on healthy and sustainable living.
Which, yeah, I entirely agree. I think that was perhaps the traditional perspective as well. It's things like, again, with offshore wind farms, it was traditionally obviously a bit more expensive than just an oil and gas. However, having said that, with the past recent years with technology advancements, with the lithium-ion batteries, for example, and also large turbines, for example, it actually is more affordable than actually the traditional oil and gas. So it's things like that alongside just government funding, which is both present here in the UK, here in Hong Kong, and also in the UK as well. So again, it's all about marrying the business priorities with the government schemes as well.
And any last comments to share with us?
I think everything starts with us. So it starts with what we choose to eat. It starts with the battle we take to work. It's up to us to decide that we want to be more sustainable, and it's go beyond everything that we can imagine. So this is it.
Just a last point. Someone once said to me that it is a ludicrous idea to have infinite growth on a finite planet, which that kind of really struck with me, because I think success with companies, it's often measured in growth, profit, and loss statements. So it's how do we shift away from that? Which is, again, I know it's ludicrous because we are in Hong Kong and money talks, and obviously, but at the end of the day, you can't eat money. And again, with green tax, with this concept of green tax, if you look at the long term, when it comes to resources, again, we have only finite resources. So if we look long term, it actually will be more expensive to try and fight for that finite resource bank. So surely the green tax will be perhaps occurred now, but on the long run, actually, the business case for sustainability actually is still more cheaper, and also it would ensure the longevity of your company. Because if you produce food, for example, and there's no more food for you to process, you won't exist anymore. So to me, it's a bit of a no-brainer to become more sustainable. Like the business case, it's clearly there. So I do believe that green tax is more of a old traditional perspective, but once we kind of really dive deep into why it is there, I think it's a no-brainer to have it implemented.
It's actually a good point. Probably the last point around here is it's not just about the stick, it's also about the carrot as well. So, and especially with everyone around here, it's about the carrot for everyone. To have that incentive, like what the Hong Kong International Airport is doing, it can be expanded over to other corporates as well. It's not just, hey, I'm going to fine you for getting another plastic bag and stuff like that, which is okay in a while. But then again, over the long term, you got to have some sort of an incentive, financially or non-financially, that people are saying, hey, I want to do this myself, instead of, hey, I'm forced to do this.
Absolutely, I 100% agree with that sentiment. So thank you all so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Invest Hong Kong, for asking me. And I'll just leave you with, I'll encourage you all to rethink your role in the future of Hong Kong, and let's hope that is a cleaner, greener, more sustainable, and more equitable city for us all to enjoy. Thank you so much.
Thank you once again to the panel for an excellent and fantastic discussion, really. Thank you very much. Please be seated.